The dawn of the 20th century saw an unprecedented wave of social and political upheaval, with one name becoming synonymous with radical change: Karl Marx. Born in Prussia in 1818 to a well-to-do middle-class family, Marx was initially groomed for a career in law, but soon found his true calling as a philosopher, economist, and revolutionary socialist. His early life was marked by the turbulent political climate of Europe, where conservative monarchies struggled to maintain control over increasingly restless populations demanding greater freedoms and rights. As a young man, Marx moved to Paris in 1843, where he began his journey into radical politics. It was here that he met Friedrich Engels, who would become both his lifelong friend and collaborator. Together, they delved into the writings of earlier philosophers like Hegel and Feuerbach, critically analyzing their ideas on society, economics, and human nature. Marx's groundbreaking work began to take shape in this period with the publication of the German Ideology and later the Communist Manifesto. These texts challenged prevailing notions about class struggle, capitalism, and the exploitation of workers by capitalists. Marx argued that history was driven not by ideas, but by material conditions, a radical departure from earlier philosophical traditions. In his seminal work, Das Kapital, published in 1867, Marx expanded on these themes, providing a detailed critique of capitalist economics. He introduced the concept of surplus value, the difference between what workers earn and what they produce, which is appropriated by capitalists as profit. This idea sparked fierce debate and controversy, solidifying Marx's reputation as an iconoclast within academia and beyond. Yet, despite his intellectual rigor and penetrating insights, many found Marx's theories to be unsettling, particularly among those in power who feared the threat of communism spreading across Europe. The term communist itself became a loaded one, often associated with radicalism, subversion, and even treason against established orders. In the years leading up to World War I, various socialist movements began adopting Marx's ideas more openly, forming political parties dedicated to implementing communist principles in government. These groups faced significant resistance from conservative forces within society, leading to a period of intense ideological conflict and repression. One aspect of Marx's theory that resonated deeply with workers around the world was his critique of alienation. He argued that under capitalism, individuals are alienated not only from their products but also from themselves, from others, and from nature. Workers spend long hours laboring in factories or fields, producing goods they will never own or benefit fully from. This sense of disconnection fueled widespread dissatisfaction with the status quo. However, as communism gained traction among the disenfranchised, it also began to attract a more sinister element: those who saw political power as an end in itself rather than a means to improve society. The Russian Revolution of 1917 marked a pivotal moment when Marxist ideals were put into practice on a grand scale under Lenin and later Stalin's rule. While the early years brought hope for social equality, the reality soon devolved into totalitarianism with disastrous consequences. Despite these setbacks, Marx's influence remained profound. His analysis of capitalist exploitation laid bare the mechanisms by which wealth accumulates at the expense of laborers. This critique resonated not only among workers but also among intellectuals and reformers seeking to understand and challenge economic inequality. Yet, one aspect of Marx's legacy that continues to provoke debate is his perspective on time itself, or more specifically, how capitalism thefts time from those who work for a living. According to Marx, in a capitalist economy, the value produced by workers extends beyond just their wages. It includes unpaid labor time, which is effectively stolen through the process of exploitation. This idea of time theft is central to understanding why many feel so disenchanted with contemporary capitalism. Workers often spend more hours than they are compensated for, contributing disproportionately to corporate profits while receiving relatively little in return. This imbalance fuels resentment and frustration among those who see themselves as essential yet undervalued contributors to society's economic engine. Moreover, the concept of time theft extends beyond mere economic exploitation. It also touches on deeper existential concerns about how we live our lives. When so much of our waking hours are devoted to work that seems disconnected from any meaningful purpose or fulfillment, questions arise about the true value and meaning of such labor. This sentiment is encapsulated in Marx's notion of alienation, where individuals feel estranged not only economically but personally. Marx's critique of capitalism as a system that steals time has thus become a touchstone for contemporary debates on work-life balance, worker rights, and the pursuit of genuine happiness versus mere survival. As societies continue to grapple with issues of inequality and sustainability, his ideas remain relevant in their challenge to traditional notions of productivity and value. In essence, Karl Marx's legacy is one of both inspiration and provocation. Through his incisive analysis of capitalist dynamics and the exploitation inherent within them, he provided a powerful lens through which to view social injustices. Yet, the implementation of Marxist ideals in practice has often led to unintended consequences, raising questions about the feasibility and desirability of revolutionary change. As we reflect on Marx's impact today, it is clear that his insights continue to shape our understanding of economic systems and their effects on human dignity and well-being. The challenge remains for future generations to find a balance between critical analysis and constructive action in addressing the pressing issues of our time.
This referred not just to the literal hours spent working, but also to the psychological toll imposed by capitalist work culture. Workers felt pressured to meet impossible deadlines, sacrificing personal lives for career advancement that often resulted in burnout and disillusionment. As she poured her coffee into a mug, Maya thought about how this theft of time manifested in her own life. Despite having graduated from university with high expectations, she found herself working multiple jobs just to make ends meet while struggling to find employment aligned with her passions and values. Her days blurred together as she juggled responsibilities without feeling any sense of fulfillment or purpose. This condition extended beyond individual experiences to encompass societal structures that normalized overwork and underpayment. Workers were often expected to be available 24/7, sacrificing leisure time and personal health for the sake of productivity metrics. This emphasis on output rather than outcome created a culture where human needs took second place to economic efficiency. Maya's thoughts turned towards the implications of such structures. If capitalism was designed to extract value from people at every turn, what did that say about her identity? Was she merely an instrument for producing profit, or could she reclaim ownership over her own life and work? Her mind wandered back to a lecture on Marx's vision of communism as an alternative system. In this model, individuals would be free to pursue meaningful labor without fear of destitution or exploitation. The idea was not just about redistributing wealth, but transforming the very basis upon which society operated, shifting from profit-driven motives towards mutual aid and communal benefit. Yet, the path forward remained unclear. While Marx provided a critique and an alternative framework, implementing such changes required collective action on a massive scale. Societies would need to re-evaluate their priorities and commit to creating systems that valued human dignity over economic growth at all costs. Maya finished her coffee and opened up her browser to look for local community groups advocating for workers' rights and social justice. She felt a growing sense of urgency to engage with these issues actively, seeking out ways to contribute meaningfully beyond the confines of capitalist norms that seemed so stifling and oppressive. As she began browsing through group listings and event pages, Maya realized that her awakening to alienation was part of a larger movement. People around the world were questioning their place in society and exploring new avenues for personal fulfillment and collective progress. This realization brought both hope and responsibility. Hope that change was possible if they acted together, responsibility to be part of this shift towards a more equitable, compassionate future. In the quiet moments before dawn turned into full daylight outside her window, Maya felt a stirring within herself, a desire to break free from the chains of alienation imposed by capitalist society. It wasn't just about rejecting capitalism, but embracing a vision of humanity that's centered on mutual support and shared prosperity. And in this moment, she knew that however daunting the task might seem, it was essential to begin somewhere, with small steps towards creating communities based on solidarity rather than exploitation. As Maya sat by her window, watching dawn break across the city skyline, she felt an overwhelming sense of urgency to act. It wasn't just about rejecting capitalism for its inherent flaws and injustices. It was a call to build something new, a society grounded in mutual support, collective well-being, and genuine human connections. This was not an abstract notion, but a tangible vision that demanded action from the moment she decided to take her first step. Maya's journey began with questions that had long haunted her. Why does our economic system force us into constant competition rather than cooperation? How can we live in a world where wealth is concentrated among so few, while the majority struggle daily just to survive? These were not new questions. They echoed through history and found their most coherent voice in Karl Marx's critique of capitalism. Marx argued that under capitalism, workers are alienated from their work, from each other, and from the products they create. The very essence of capitalist production strips individuals of their humanity, reducing them to mere cogs in a vast economic machine designed solely for profit. This process of dehumanization is both subtle and insidious. It operates through mechanisms that seem natural, but are actually constructed social realities. At the heart of Marx's critique lies his concept of commodity fetishism, wherein the value we ascribe to objects overshadows their human meaning. Goods become symbols of status, power, and identity, while the people who create them remain marginalized and unseen. This transformation creates a society where appearances dominate reality, a world of illusions. But how does this illusion manifest in everyday life? For Maya, it was evident in the relentless pursuit of material success that dominated her community. People were coerced into buying things they didn't need, pursuing jobs they disliked, all to maintain an appearance of prosperity and social standing. It wasn't just about personal choice, it was a systemic pressure enforced by societal norms and economic incentives. Capitalism thrives on the illusion of freedom, presenting endless options as proof of individual liberty. Yet beneath this veneer lies a deep-seated coercion: work or starve. The promise of autonomy is a cruel mirage. When Maya began to see her society through Marx's lens, she realized that her actions were not truly free, but governed by economic forces beyond her control. The illusion of choice and the reality of coercion intersect in numerous ways within capitalist societies. For instance, the education system trains individuals from a young age to compete for scarce resources, jobs, housing, social status, and teaches them to view success as synonymous with material accumulation. This conditioning perpetuates a cycle of competition where cooperation seems both impractical and dangerous. Furthermore, advertisements play a crucial role in reinforcing this illusion by creating desires that are impossible to satisfy without participating fully in the capitalist economy. They promise happiness through consumption, but deliver only temporary satisfaction, followed by renewed desire for more. The constant churn of demand fuels economic growth at the expense of genuine human needs and fulfillment. Maya's awakening to these realities was gradual yet profound. As she delved deeper into Marx's theory, she began to see capitalism not as an inevitable fact, but a historical condition shaped by specific social and political forces. Marx's insight that history is made by people, albeit under given and inherited circumstances, resonated deeply with her. This realization opened up new possibilities for action. If capitalism was not the ultimate endpoint of human development, but merely one stage in our evolution as a species, then it could be transcended. The challenge lay in envisioning and building an alternative, a society rooted in cooperation rather than competition, one that valued human relationships over economic transactions. For Maya, this meant starting small with local initiatives that fostered solidarity among community members. She began organizing events where people shared skills, resources, and ideas freely without the expectation of profit or recognition. These acts of mutual aid were not just about survival, they were a declaration of humanity's inherent capacity for kindness and collaboration. However, such efforts faced significant obstacles. The structures of power embedded in capitalist systems are resistant to change, often using legal frameworks, media narratives, and social stigma to enforce compliance. Yet, every small act of defiance, whether through direct action, education, or simply refusing to participate in destructive practices, pierced the illusion of inevitability. Marx's critique also extended beyond economics into political theory. He argued that revolutionary change requires not just economic transformation, but a radical restructuring of society at large. This involves dismantling oppressive institutions and rebuilding them on principles of equality, justice, and mutual respect. For Maya, this meant engaging with politics, joining movements for social reform, and actively seeking to shape the narrative around what constitutes progress. The path forward was fraught with challenges. Capitalism's resilience stemmed from its ability to adapt, absorb dissent, and co-opt revolutionary ideas into manageable forms that ultimately serve the interests of capital. Yet, each act of resistance, no matter how small, chipped away at the ideological foundations supporting this system. As Maya continued her journey, she found solace in understanding that history is not linear, but cyclical. Periods of reaction often follow eras of radical change, and yet these cycles provide opportunities for learning and advancing towards more just societies. By engaging critically with Marxist theory and applying its insights to current contexts, Maya was better equipped to navigate the complexities of political activism. Ultimately, her quest wasn't about proving Marx right or wrong, but using his framework as a tool to understand and transform reality. It became clear that the illusion of choice in capitalism was not just an economic problem, but a philosophical one, a distortion of our understanding of freedom and community. Maya's story is far from unique. It echoes through countless lives shaped by capitalist dynamics worldwide. Yet, her journey offers hope even amidst overwhelming odds. Individuals can choose solidarity over isolation, cooperation over competition, and collective action over individualism. In doing so, they not only challenge the status quo, but also pave the way for a future where humanity's true potential is realized. And as the sun rose higher in the sky, casting its light on a city still asleep under capitalist dreams, Maya felt the stirrings of hope and determination. The road ahead was long and fraught with challenges, yet she knew that each step towards solidarity brought her closer to a world where genuine human connections could flourish. As the sun began to rise over the sprawling city, its golden rays piercing through the haze of dawn, Maya found herself reflecting on the profound disconnection she felt from her labor. She had always been a diligent worker, pouring countless hours into her job at a large corporation, but lately, something felt amiss. The work that once filled her with pride now left her feeling hollow and disconnected, a sensation she couldn't quite shake off. Maya's story is not unique. Across the globe, millions of workers feel estranged from their labor, a phenomenon deeply rooted in Karl Marx's critique of capitalism. In his seminal works like Das Kapital and the Communist Manifesto, Marx delved into the dynamics of capitalist society, dissecting how it alienates individuals from themselves, each other, and the products of their own labor. Marx's analysis of alienation begins with what he termed the commodity fetishisms. This concept refers to the idea that under capitalism, human creativity is reduced to a commodity, valued solely for its exchange value rather than its intrinsic worth. Workers produce goods and services, but they do not control their own labor or its outcomes. Instead, this power lies in the hands of capitalists who extract surplus value from workers through the production process. To understand Marx's theory of alienation, it is essential to consider his four main forms: alienation from the product of labor, alienation from other people, self-alienation, and alienation from the act of production itself. The first form, alienation from the product of labor, is particularly relevant here. When a worker creates something in a capitalist society, they are often disconnected from their creation. This disconnection arises because the product is not seen as an extension of the worker's self, but rather as a commodity to be sold and consumed by others. The objectification of labor transforms what should be a personal expression into a mere tool for economic exchange. Workers do not own the fruits of their labor. Instead, they are paid wages that only cover their basic needs, leaving them with little connection to or satisfaction from the products they create. Consider Maya's experience in her office job. Each day, she sits at her desk, working on reports and documents that seem to have no real meaning beyond their immediate use by her employer. She spends hours crafting presentations and conducting market research, yet as soon as these tasks are completed, she loses touch with them. The products of her labor, whether it's a report or a spreadsheet, are filed away in digital archives where they exist solely for the company's benefit. This disconnection is not merely emotional, it has profound social implications. When workers lose sight of the personal value and meaning behind their creations, they also lose touch with their identities as creative beings. They become mere cogs in a machine, valued only for their ability to produce surplus value, rather than for who they are or what they can contribute beyond labor. Marx argued that under capitalism, workers are reduced to the lowest common denominator of human existence, producers of commodities. Their individuality and creativity are subsumed by the impersonal nature of market forces. This transformation strips away the essence of humanity, the ability to express oneself through one's work, and replaces it with a monotonous cycle of production for profit. Furthermore, Marx's critique extends beyond the mere emotional or psychological aspects of labor, alienation. It addresses the material conditions that create this estrangement. Workers are alienated not just from their products, but also from each other and from themselves as individuals. In capitalist society, relationships between people are mediated by commodities and money rather than genuine human interaction. In Maya's case, her interactions with colleagues often revolve around work assignments or project deadlines rather than personal connections or shared interests. The impersonal nature of these exchanges reinforces the idea that what she produces is valuable only insofar as it contributes to the company's bottom line, not because it embodies any inherent human value. The concept of self-alienation is equally significant. Marx argued that when workers are alienated from their products and from each other, they also become estranged from themselves. This internal disconnection leads to a sense of dissatisfaction, frustration, and even depression. Workers lose sight of their own potential and creativity as individuals, feeling trapped in a cycle of repetitive tasks devoid of personal meaning. Finally, the act of production itself becomes alienating under capitalism. The division of labor within factories or offices means that workers often perform very specialized tasks, reducing complex work processes to simplistic, monotonous activities. This fragmentation of labor not only diminishes the sense of accomplishment, but also robs individuals of the ability to see the broader picture of what they are contributing. For example, in a factory setting where assembly line work is repetitive and isolated, workers may produce thousands of identical items each day without ever seeing or understanding the finished product. This isolation can lead to feelings of insignificance and detachment from any sense of achievement or contribution to society as a whole. Marx's insights into labor alienation offer a stark critique of capitalism, but also point towards a potential alternative. He envisioned a future where workers are not merely producers of commodities, but active participants in the creation of their own lives and societies. In such a world, the products of labor would reflect individual creativity and collective human endeavor, rather than being reduced to mere economic exchange. This vision of communism, as Marx conceived it, does not mean the abolition of work itself, but rather the transformation of labor into something meaningful and fulfilling. Workers would control their own production processes, ensuring that they are valued for their contributions beyond just economic output. The emphasis would shift from exploitation to solidarity, creating a society where individuals can express themselves fully through their work. In practical terms, this means restructuring workplaces so that workers have more autonomy over the tasks they perform and how they perform them. It also implies greater community involvement in decision-making processes related to production, ensuring that what is produced serves genuine human needs rather than just generating profit for corporations. Maya's journey towards a deeper understanding of these concepts began when she started reading Marx's works alongside her daily routine. Each page revealed new layers of meaning behind the alienation she felt at work. She found solace in the idea that this wasn't merely an individual struggle, but part of a broader societal issue. As Maya delved deeper into Marx's theories, she began to see her role as extending beyond just herself. She started engaging with fellow workers, discussing their feelings about labor and the impact it had on their lives. Slowly but surely, small pockets of solidarity emerged within her workplace, where people shared their experiences and sought ways to reclaim a sense of control over their work. This movement towards collective action was not an overnight transformation. It required patience, persistence, and understanding. But as workers began to see themselves not just as individuals isolated from each other, but as part of a larger community with shared struggles and aspirations, the groundwork for real change started taking shape. The road ahead is long and fraught with challenges. Maya understands that changing societal structures requires more than just personal resolve. It demands collaboration on a grand scale. Yet she also knows that each step towards solidarity brings her closer to a world where genuine human connections can flourish. A world where labor is not seen as an alienating force, but as the means through which people express their creativity, fulfill their potential, and build meaningful relationships with others. As Maya continued on this path of discovery and action, she felt a renewed sense of hope. The sun had risen over the city once more, casting its light upon a landscape still dominated by capitalist ideals, but now illuminated by the promise of a future where humanity's true potential could be realized. Her journey was far from over, yet each step taken brought her closer to understanding and fighting against the disconnection that capitalism imposes on human labor. The sun had risen over the city once more, casting its light upon a landscape still dominated by capitalist ideals. However, this time, it was illuminated by the promise of a future where humanity's true potential could be realized. Maya continued her journey into understanding and fighting against the disconnection that capitalism imposes on human labor. As she delved deeper into economic theories, one name inevitably emerged as a cornerstone of critique: Karl Marx. Born in 1818 to a wealthy Jewish family in Prussia, Marx's life was marked by his deep intellectual curiosity and relentless pursuit of truth. Early in his career, he published articles that critiqued capitalism and the oppressive nature of its economic structures. Marx's seminal work, Das Kapital, is a comprehensive critique of political economy. At its core lies the concept of alienation, the idea that under capitalist conditions, workers become estranged from their labor, their fellow human beings, the products they create, and themselves as producers. This theory suggests that the commodification of labor leads to an existential crisis for individuals who are reduced to mere units of production. Marx also introduced the concept of surplus value, the idea that capitalists profit not just through exchange, but by appropriating a portion of workers' productivity without fair compensation. In other words, the capitalist gains from the exploitation of labor beyond what is paid as wages. This excess value, Marx argued, is the basis for capitalist profit and growth. A fundamental concept in Marx's critique is that under capitalism, work ceases to be an expression of one's humanity, but rather a means for survival. Workers are forced into contracts not out of mutual benefit or personal fulfillment, but because they need wages to live. The relationship between employer and employee becomes one-sided, with power lying firmly on the side of capital. In this context, Marx famously asked, "Are you a communist?" His question was more than rhetorical. It challenged individuals to consider their role in an economic system that exploits labor. To understand his perspective requires diving into the mechanics of capitalism and its inherent contradictions. Marx's critique extends beyond economics to touch on political philosophy and social theory. He saw capitalism as inherently unstable, marked by periodic crises arising from overproduction and underconsumption. Capitalists continually seek new markets and resources to sustain profit margins, leading to cycles of boom and bust that leave workers suffering through no fault of their own. Central to Marx's analysis is the idea of voluntary contracts being transformed into chains. Workers enter into labor agreements freely, but these contracts soon become coercive mechanisms for exploitation. The freedom of choice evaporates as economic necessity forces individuals into roles they might otherwise reject or reform. Consider a scenario where an employee works overtime regularly. Initially, this might be seen as an agreement between employer and worker to fulfill certain production targets. However, the nature of capitalist dynamics ensures that such arrangements often become exploitative. Workers put in extra hours without adequate compensation, leading to burnout and disconnection from their true desires. Marx's insight into voluntary contracts becoming chains is evident in modern-day labor practices, where companies leverage economic instability to extract more work from employees at lower costs. This dynamic reinforces the capitalist structure, but alienates individuals further from authentic human connection and fulfillment. Moreover, Marx delved into the concept of theft of time. Capitalism operates on a principle that prioritizes efficiency over quality of life for workers. Time spent outside of labor is often trivialized or rendered superfluous in comparison to productive output within working hours. This devaluation of non-working moments leads to an overall sense of alienation and dissatisfaction with one's place in society. In the capitalist framework, every minute not devoted to increasing profit potential is seen as wasted time. Consequently, leisure activities become secondary to economic productivity, undermining personal development and communal bonds outside the workplace. Marx argued that this commodification of time robs individuals of their humanity by denying them opportunities for meaningful engagement with others beyond mere transactions. Beyond labor relationships, Marx's critique extends to the broader societal impacts of capitalism. He observed how capitalist dynamics lead to an increasing polarization between rich and poor, further exacerbating social inequalities. The systemic nature of this divide creates a society where wealth accumulation is concentrated among the few, while the majority struggle to meet basic needs. This disparity not only widens economic gaps, but also fosters social tensions and political instability. Marx warned that such conditions are unsustainable in the long run and would inevitably lead to revolutionary changes as oppressed groups fight back against exploitative systems. Returning to the question, "Are you a communist?" it invites reflection on personal complicity within capitalist structures. It challenges individuals to examine their roles not just as workers, but as consumers, citizens, and members of communities impacted by economic policies. Marx's work encourages questioning whether one's actions contribute towards perpetuating exploitation or fostering genuine human connections and societal progress. Maya found herself grappling with these ideas deeply. She realized that while she might not identify fully as a communist, the concepts raised by Marx offered critical insights into understanding her own disconnection from meaningful labor. The journey to find alternatives to capitalist alienation was arduous, but filled with hope for a future where human dignity and communal well-being were prioritized over profit motives. In conclusion, Marx's critique of capitalism reveals profound truths about the nature of economic relationships underpinning modern society. His insights into voluntary contracts transforming into chains and the theft of time highlight the disempowering effects of capitalist dynamics on individuals and communities alike. As Maya's journey continued, she found herself increasingly drawn to exploring these themes in greater depth, seeking out ways to challenge the status quo and envision a more humane economic future. The relentless pursuit of growth, driven by capitalist ideology, has led humanity down a path fraught with environmental degradation and social inequality. This obsession with infinite economic expansion on a finite planet is not just unsustainable, it poses a direct threat to the very survival of our species. As Maya delved deeper into her exploration of alternative economic systems, she began to question the foundational principles of capitalism itself. One figure whose work loomed large in her studies was Karl Marx. Born in 1818, Marx is often remembered for his scathing critiques of capitalist society and his vision of a communist future where the means of production are owned collectively by the people rather than privately by individuals or corporations. However, it's crucial to understand that Marx wasn't merely an ideologue but a meticulous analyst who dissected the inner workings of capitalism to expose its inherent flaws. Marx's insights into the nature of work under capitalism reveal a fundamental truth about modern economic relationships, the transformation of voluntary contracts into chains that bind individuals to exploitative labor conditions. At the heart of this critique is the concept of theft of time. According to Marx, under capitalism, workers are not compensated for their full hours of labor. Instead, they are paid only enough to sustain themselves and reproduce their own labor power. The surplus value created by workers' labor beyond what is required for their survival is appropriated by capitalists in the form of profit. This appropriation of time, which Marx refers to as theft, highlights a profound disempowerment of individuals within capitalist systems. Workers are forced to sell their most precious resource, their ability to work, to employers who dictate the terms and conditions of that labor without regard for workers' well-being or dignity. The relentless pursuit of profit leads to long hours, dangerous working environments, and psychological stress as individuals struggle to keep pace with ever-increasing productivity demands. As Maya studied Marx's works, she became increasingly aware of how this dynamic plays out in everyday life. She observed that the more people work, the less time they have for leisure activities or personal development. This imbalance not only stifles individual potential, but also erodes community ties and social cohesion. The pursuit of profit becomes the overriding concern, overshadowing considerations of fairness, sustainability, and human well-being. Moreover, Marx's critique extends beyond just the workplace to encompass broader societal structures under capitalism. He argued that capitalist dynamics create a hierarchical society where wealth is concentrated in the hands of a few, while the majority struggle to make ends meet. This inequality fuels social tensions, resentment, and conflict, as those who are left behind see their opportunities diminish even as they work harder than ever before. The concept of infinite growth on a finite planet serves as another critical lens through which to view Marx's critique. Capitalism thrives on the premise that economic expansion is both desirable and inevitable. However, this belief ignores the ecological limits imposed by our natural environment. Resources are not limitless. Ecosystems have carrying capacities beyond which they cannot sustain life without catastrophic consequences. As the global economy continues its relentless push for growth, it places increasing strain on the planet's finite resources. Forests are cleared at an alarming rate to make way for agriculture and mining operations. Oceans are overfished, leading to collapses in marine ecosystems that have sustained human societies for millennia. Fossil fuels are extracted from beneath the Earth's surface with little regard for their contribution to climate change and environmental degradation. The irony is stark as capitalism drives us towards ever greater economic success measured by GDP growth and profit margins. It simultaneously undermines the very foundations upon which that success rests: healthy ecosystems, stable climates, and sustainable resource use. This contradiction between capitalist ideals of infinite expansion and ecological realities presents a profound challenge to the future viability of our economy. In examining these dynamics, Maya found herself confronting not just economic theories, but philosophical questions about human nature and societal purpose. Does an economy that prioritizes growth over sustainability truly serve the needs of its citizens? Can we envision a world where people are valued more for their contributions to society than for the profits they generate? Marx's analysis provides a framework for understanding these issues, offering insights into how economic systems shape human behavior and societal structures. His work challenges us to consider what alternatives might exist beyond capitalism, a system that, while it has brought immense technological progress and wealth creation, also perpetuates inequality, exploitation, and environmental degradation. As Maya continued her journey of exploration, she began to see connections between Marx's critiques and contemporary movements, advocating for a more equitable distribution of resources, shorter working hours, and sustainable living practices. The idea that individuals could reclaim their time from the demands of capitalist work and use it instead for personal fulfillment, community building, and ecological stewardship resonated deeply with her. The notion that one is a communist simply for questioning the foundations of capitalist society often serves as a rhetorical tool to dismiss critiques rather than engage them in earnest. Yet, Marx's insights are not confined to any particular ideology. They offer critical perspectives on the nature of work, inequality, and environmental sustainability that transcend political labels. Ultimately, Maya's journey led her to see that the real question isn't whether one is a communist, but how we can build an economy that truly serves human needs that extend beyond material wealth to include health, happiness, community, and ecological balance. By embracing Marx's critique of capitalism and exploring alternative economic models, she found herself part of a broader movement seeking not just reform within the current system, but a fundamental reimagining of what it means to live well in our finite world. As we delve deeper into the consequences of our economic systems, one concept stands out as particularly damaging to our mental and emotional well-being: meaningless work. This chapter explores the psychological toll of engaging in tasks that feel devoid of purpose or connection to a larger human need. In many ways, this phenomenon is not new, but has been analyzed extensively by philosophers and economists like Karl Marx. By understanding how capitalism can turn labor into an alienating experience, we gain insight into what it means to reclaim our work and lives. Marx's critique of capitalism hinges on the idea that workers are alienated from their products, from each other, and ultimately from themselves. In his seminal work, Das Kapital, Marx describes how under capitalist conditions, labor becomes a commodity, an exchange value rather than a creative expression of human potential. Workers produce goods and services that benefit others but do not enrich the producers themselves beyond what is necessary for survival and reproduction of their labor power. One key aspect of this alienation is the separation between mental and manual work. In capitalist societies, decision-making processes are concentrated in the hands of a few managers or owners, while the majority of workers carry out repetitive tasks dictated by those decisions. This division leads to a situation where the individual feels estranged from their own creative abilities and the collective effort required to sustain society. Consider an office worker who spends hours each day inputting data into spreadsheets or performing other rote tasks that serve only to generate profits for distant shareholders. Each keystroke is a reminder of how disconnected one's daily activities are from any sense of personal fulfillment or contribution to societal well-being. Such experiences can lead individuals to feel disempowered and disillusioned, questioning the value of their own existence within such an economic framework. Moreover, this separation exacerbates feelings of isolation and competition among workers rather than fostering solidarity. When labor is reduced to a mere exchange value, it becomes easy for employers to pit employees against each other in pursuit of limited advancement opportunities or job security. This competitive environment further erodes the sense of community that should be integral to collective human endeavor. But beyond this alienation from work itself lies an even deeper existential crisis: the theft of time. When one's waking hours are consumed by tasks devoid of meaning, there is little room for personal development or pursuit of interests outside the workplace. This depletion of free time and mental resources leaves individuals feeling drained and unable to engage fully with their families, hobbies, or broader community. The impact on health can be severe. Studies have shown that prolonged exposure to meaningless work environments increases stress levels, contributing to higher rates of depression and anxiety disorders among workers. Physical ailments such as back pain, eye strain from screens, and other ergonomic issues are also common due to the sedentary nature of many modern jobs. In contrast to this dehumanizing approach, Marx envisioned a society where labor would be freely chosen by individuals based on their interests and capabilities rather than imposed upon them. Workers would take turns performing various tasks, ensuring that everyone contributes according to ability and receives according to need. Such an arrangement promises not only economic benefits but also profound psychological rewards. How do we begin moving towards such a society? It starts with recognizing the inherent value of all human activity beyond its financial worth. We must challenge corporate practices that devalue workers' creativity and autonomy, pushing instead for systems where profits are shared more equitably among those who create them. For individuals trapped in meaningless work environments today, small steps can make a difference. Seeking out creative outlets outside the workplace, joining unions or worker cooperatives to advocate for better conditions, and engaging with broader social movements fighting against economic injustice offer ways to regain some control over one's life circumstances. Ultimately, as we reflect on Marx's insights about capitalist alienation, it becomes clear that reclaiming our work means much more than simply improving labor laws or negotiating higher wages. It requires a fundamental shift in how we view the relationship between human beings and their productive activities. Only by recognizing that all humans have inherent worth beyond what they can produce for profit will we truly begin to build economies that serve rather than oppress us. As we delve deeper into Karl Marx's critique of capitalism, one concept that stands out is his idea of alienation. In this chapter, titled Recognizing the Inherent Contradictions, we explore how Marx saw capitalist society as inherently oppressive and exploitative. His work isn't just about understanding economic systems, but also about recognizing our intrinsic human worth beyond what can be measured in monetary terms. Marx believed that capitalism strips workers of their humanity by reducing them to mere cogs in a machine, where the value of labor is solely determined by its contribution to profit rather than its inherent dignity and creative potential. This dehumanization manifests in various ways, through our relationships with each other, with the products we create, and even within ourselves. One core aspect of Marx's critique centers on how capitalism alienates us from our own productive activities. In a capitalist system, workers are seen primarily as means to an end, that is, tools for generating profit. This reductionist view strips away the human element, turning individuals into mere appendages to the production process rather than active creators with intrinsic worth. Consider the factory worker who spends hours crafting a single item only to see it become part of someone else's wealth accumulation story. The product doesn't belong to them, Its value is defined by how much profit it generates for others, not by the skill or effort invested in creating it. This disconnection between one's labor and its perceived value strips away the sense of ownership and pride that comes from producing something meaningful. But alienation isn't just about our relationship with products, it also affects how we view ourselves and each other. Workers become isolated units competing for survival rather than collaborating as human beings. In a capitalist society, cooperation and mutual aid give way to individual competition driven by economic necessity. This can lead to profound feelings of isolation and disconnection from community. Moreover, the alienation described by Marx isn't just about material conditions, but also has psychological dimensions. Workers under capitalism often experience a sense of estrangement not only from their products, but from themselves as well. The act of labor becomes something external, imposed upon them rather than an expression of personal creativity and identity. Over time, this can erode self-esteem and lead to feelings of powerlessness. But Marx's critique goes further. He argues that the very essence of capitalist production is theft, not just in the sense of workers being underpaid or overworked, but in a deeper philosophical sense. In his view, capitalism steals time from workers by forcing them into repetitive, soul-sapping tasks for hours on end, leaving little room for personal development and fulfillment outside of work. The concept of theft here isn't literal, it's more about the way capitalist systems prioritize profit over human needs and desires. Workers spend vast amounts of time in environments that strip away their creativity, autonomy, and sense of self-worth, all while generating immense wealth for a few at the top. This theft is not just temporal but also existential. The repetitive nature of work under capitalism can lead to mental exhaustion and a loss of identity outside one's job description. Workers may feel like they're living merely to serve economic ends rather than pursuing personal passions or fulfilling their potential as human beings. This erosion of selfhood is profound and contributes significantly to the alienation Marx describes. So, how do we combat this theft of time and spirit? Simply improving labor laws or negotiating better wages is not enough. It doesn't address the core issue of treating humans as ends in themselves rather than means to profit. A true shift would require reconceptualizing the relationship between human beings and their productive activities. It begins by recognizing that all humans have inherent worth beyond what they can produce for profit. This isn't just about economic fairness, but a fundamental rethinking of our values and priorities as a society. We need to build economies where people are valued not just for their productivity, but for who they are. Creative, thoughtful individuals capable of making meaningful contributions. Moreover, reclaiming our work means empowering workers to have more control over the production process. This can involve cooperative models where workers share ownership and decision-making power, thereby re-establishing a sense of connection between labor and its outcomes. By doing so, we move away from seeing workers as mere tools towards recognizing them as central actors in shaping their own destinies. This isn't to say that Marxist solutions are the only way forward. Rather, it's about understanding the core issues Marx identified and finding ways to address them within our current economic framework. Whether through cooperative enterprises, shorter work weeks allowing more time for personal growth, or policies that support creativity and innovation outside of traditional employment structures. There are multiple avenues to explore. Ultimately, reclaiming our work means embracing a worldview where human dignity is paramount. It's about valuing people not just as labor units, but as individuals with unique talents and aspirations. Only by doing so can we hope to build economies that truly serve us rather than exploit us, an endeavor that resonates deeply with Marx's call for a society where the full humanity of every individual shines through. As we reflect on these ideas, it becomes clear that they offer more than just economic critique. They propose a radical rethinking of what it means to live in harmony with one's fellow humans and oneself. This chapter invites us to consider not only how we can improve our immediate circumstances, but also how we might transform the very fabric of our society towards one where human flourishing truly is at its heart. As we delve into the complexities of Karl Marx's critique of capitalism, it becomes essential to explore not just his economic theories, but also their broader implications on human dignity and freedom. The question, "Are you a communist?" is one that echoes through history and even in today's discussions, often more charged than necessary. However, by dissecting the core principles behind Marx's ideas, we can uncover a deeper understanding of why certain aspects of his theory resonate with so many people around the world. Marx's analysis begins not just from an economic standpoint, but also through the lens of social and humanistic critique. He argues that under capitalism, workers are alienated from their labor, meaning they lose touch with the product of their work as it becomes commodified and controlled by others. This alienation is more than a simple economic transaction. It's about the very essence of what it means to be human, to create something meaningful out of one's efforts, and to feel connected to that creation. Capitalism, in Marx's view, distorts this relationship between the worker and their labor through the mechanisms of wage labor. Workers sell their time and energy for a living wage rather than creating products directly tied to their personal value systems or desires. This system creates an imbalance where workers are not valued for their individual worth, but rather as interchangeable units in the production process, often leading to feelings of dehumanization. The concept of labor under capitalism becomes a mere means towards survival and financial security, devoid of any intrinsic joy or purpose. Marx saw this alienation extending beyond just the workplace. It affected every aspect of life where individuals became disconnected from their communities and natural surroundings due to the pervasive influence of market logic. Central to Marx's critique is his idea that capitalism steals time from workers in two distinct ways: direct theft through overwork and indirect theft through creating a society where leisure is devalued. Overwork, driven by competition and profit motives, leads to exhaustion both physically and mentally. Meanwhile, the devaluation of non-working hours means that even when not formally working, individuals are constantly pressured by market demands such as constant consumption or entertainment, leaving little room for genuine restorative activities. The theft of time under capitalism is thus a dual-edged sword, robbing workers of both the quality and quantity of their time. It transforms every moment into an economic calculation, stripping away leisure time that should be used to rejuvenate one's spirit and enrich one's soul. This relentless focus on productivity and efficiency undermines the very idea of personal fulfillment outside labor. But what does this have to do with being a communist? Marx's vision for a post-capitalist society is deeply rooted in restoring human dignity through reimagining the relationship between people, their work, and themselves. By removing the profit motive from production and placing control back into the hands of workers, communism aims to create an environment where individuals can engage in meaningful labor that aligns with both personal and communal goals. In a communist society, each person contributes according to their abilities and receives according to their needs. This principle ensures that no individual is left behind or exploited by economic systems designed solely for profit. It promotes the idea of a balanced life where work and leisure are harmoniously integrated without one dominating the other. Marx's critique isn't just theoretical, it offers practical solutions aimed at creating a more equitable world. By addressing issues such as alienation, overwork, and the devaluation of non-working time, Marx's ideas resonate with those who seek to reclaim their humanity in a system that often seems to oppress rather than support. Critics of communism argue against its feasibility or ethical implications, pointing out historical failures and ideological rigidity. However, these critiques often miss the nuanced essence of Marx's argument. It is not about enforcing a rigid economic structure, but about challenging the mechanisms that deny people their full humanity. In contemporary society, where discussions around work-life balance, mental health, and social justice are increasingly prominent, Marx's ideas offer a compelling framework for understanding modern issues. The theft of time through excessive labor demands and market pressures resonates with many who feel disconnected from their work and struggle to find meaningful leisure. As we consider the future, embracing elements of Marx's critique could lead to more humane workplaces that value workers as individuals rather than just economic units. This approach can inspire a transformation towards societies where everyone's full humanity is acknowledged and celebrated, moving beyond mere survival to thriving in all aspects of life. By reclaiming human dignity through questioning the status quo and advocating for systems that truly support individual flourishing, Marx's legacy continues to inform our quest for a more equitable and compassionate world.